Hey, sports fans, welcome back to the Sound Advice Podcast. I'm your host, Gino Medina. And those of you who have been listening, you probably know I threw in a little sarcasm there. This isn't really for sports fans at all, but for those musicians who love to watch football, there is no football right now. So there is no excuse to join us every Sunday at 12 for new episodes. So you can do that. Please. Please do that. Like and subscribe to the channel if you like what we're doing. We're just here to provide good advice for other working musicians and some insights and tips. Anything that'll keep you guys busy, keep you guys working. Some of these things work for me. I've learned a lot from the wonderful people I've had the privilege of speaking with. And you can go through the channel to see who they are. They're great, great musicians, great people. And today is no exception. We are going to be speaking with Amy Gerhartz. She was working out of Memphis for a while, and I believe she's in Virginia now. She's a singer-songwriter. She's got 6 albums under her belt and over 13 years of performing experience. And she's done it all independently. So she's forged her own way, and she's starting to build her own empire. And she's expanding on that. And she has been kind enough to join us today for the podcast. And she is going to share her story with us. So stick around for that. But before we go any further, if you like what we're doing here at the Sound Advice Podcast, please make sure to click that little subscribe banner and click the little bell. That'll let you know when we got something new on the channel, and you can join us for that. So please do that. I'm going to cut to the chase because I talk too damn much, and I'm just going to let you guys hear our conversation. So please welcome to the program, Miss Amy Gerhartz. Thank you for joining me, Amy. Welcome to the program.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Gino. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. I've not spoken with you in a great while, and of course we've worked together in the past.
It's been very long. It feels like a lifetime ago.
It really does, but it's interestingly enough, just talking with you, it doesn't really seem like much time has passed. And I felt comfortable with you when I first met you at that Starbucks after getting your name from Jason Pomar, who I think he's still working with Ed. I know he's gone through he's had some really wonderful things happening for him, so I'm really happy for him. Let's talk about your career for a little bit. You're obviously the singer-songwriter thing. That's what I associated with you for a long time, and I'm sure you're much greater than that. And by that, I mean you're capable of much more than just being pigeonholed in singer-songwriter category. So I don't want to do that to you. But how did you get your start in entertainment? And how did this lead to you becoming self-employed and touring with music?
Music? Well, that's a great question. Kind of like all entertainers, I started out, singing to myself and writing little songs and being creative and as a child. And that led to me going down the path of theater and musical theater and choir and stuff in school, and then going to college to pursue music and as a degree. And then I moved to Manhattan. Well, at first I moved to Virginia. I worked for a music venue there for a little while. I learned how to play, was very terrible at it. Everybody that has listened to my podcast knows this story. I was a really bad guitar player when I first started. And then I just started playing out at local bars.
At how old?
At 21, I'd started playing a coffee shop right off campus. And then for free, of course, everybody has to cut their teeth and start some.
Sure.
And then I started playing a local bar my senior year of college pretty much once a week. And then after graduation, I moved to Manhattan and got a job in commercial real estate as an executive assistant and started playing music. But it really just started out with me booking a show and then booking another show and then booking another show. And then about a year and a half after living in New York, I decided it just wasn't me as a creative and what I wanted to do and pursue. So I started playing music full time in Atlanta. I think I was playing at one point 8 shows a week. There was one year. Yeah.
How do you pack 8 shows a week? And
you do doubles? Say yes to everything, really.
I got you. So you're not necessarily playing every single day to do 8 shows.
Yeah. So I would play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 2 shows on Saturday or 2 shows on Sunday. And then you break it up however you can do it. And I became a little more seasoned in the Atlanta scene, and I became a little more selective with the places that I was playing. I was able to afford to play some hotels and some nicer, higher end restaurants and bars and get paid a little bit more money and just stick with a couple days of the week versus,
instead of overextending yourself all week long.
Want to work and you want to play. and you don't really care. You're like, just, you don't think about burnout. So that's what I did for the 8 years that I lived in Atlanta. I played a lot of cover shows, which then led to me. And here's the one thing that I did that I didn't see a lot of other people doing. Now I think they do it a lot more so, was that I would incorporate a lot of my original music into my shows. And so I would get booked, and then I would bring CDs and I would sell my CDs at these shows, and as well, on top of taking tips. And now I think people do that a lot more.
Yes, you kind of forged a little cottage industry.
A lot
out
of
that.
people were just cover artists. They didn't really do a lot of original music in the shows. So what that did for me was it put me in a position to be able to be booked for local stuff around Atlanta.
Like as an original artist, you mean?
As an original artist, yeah.
Very cool.
Because I had already been playing my original music around town. And so I was able to start these festivals with original music, but I would still add in a couple cover songs because you want to familiarize the audience with something they know. And so that turned into me, but because I had already, it was like I took the cover shows, incorporated some of my music, took the original shows, incorporated a few cover songs in there as well, because I was still starting out. I was still writing my stuff. And so I didn't have a full catalog of 3 hours of original music that I could play. And then that led to me networking with, a lot of people. I met you there. And then that led to me being able to do some festivals, or not internationally, but nationally, in different states. And then that led to me getting on to this music cruise called the Rock Boat, which then transitioned into me going across country and playing original shows, predominantly with playing these intimate settings and having a minimum requirement that I needed to make, similar to playing a local gig as well, but budgeting in for expenses. And then the rest is really history in terms of the music. It just kept building. And I think that's the one thing that a lot of artists don't understand is when you get started in music or you get started in entertainment at all, it takes time. It's not like very few people get into this business and all of a sudden it's like, oh, and now I'm rich and famous and I didn't do any work for it. Everybody has to do a lot of work, and you lay the groundwork with every single gig that you do.
It sounds really grassroots, and that's not something I think we see very much anymore with the advent of shows like American Idol. Going on a show to win a contract or win popularity or whatever it is they're competing for, to me, it seems contrived. I really don't see where you're finding an artist as opposed to a mouthpiece for some producer's music. There's some gems that have come out of those kinds of shows. Obviously, Carrie Underwood and Kelly Clarkson would be the exception. But, back in my day, it was the typical garage band stuff. And then you just pound the pavement and try to get discovered and try to meet the right, like you said, networking seems to be a very common thread, is meeting the right people and putting yourself in a position to be able to keep working. I really thought and forgive me if I call it by the wrong term, but the backyard concert.
House concerts.
House concerts. I thought that was a really novel approach. What was the origin of that concept? And then how did you bring that to fruition?
Yeah, well, just a couple things too, to comment on what you had just said about the people on television. A lot of people don't realize, because I've had some friends go on some of these shows too, they're pumping the pavement and like laying the groundwork for their careers well before they even audition for TV. There's a lot of them that just roll out of bed and audition for TV. You don't realize that when somebody makes it on a show like American Idol or another platform like that they've more than likely, they've been playing music for a significant amount of time before they even get to something like that. Not always, but sometimes it is. But to answer your question about the house concerts, that approach really came because I had some friends that were playing these music festivals that had already started touring. But for me, I had just heard of people doing these shows, and I thought how you can go in just the same way you would for a music venue, charge a $10 to $20 ticket. Usually, and I say a ticket, it's usually a suggested donation. You're not going to kick anybody out of somebody's house.
Gotcha. It's just a way to generate revenue.
Yeah, generating revenue. So you're making money. You're going out to these people's homes. Usually you have a place to sleep. Usually you have food that is fed to you. And it's kind of this win-win scenario. And it's not kind of, it is a win-win scenario to get in front of people that you would never get in front of otherwise, because most of the time when you're trying to tour as an independent artist, if you can't prove that you can pull a fan base in a certain region, they probably won't book you to come to that region unless you were getting an opening slot.
True. That's a good point.
It depends on where you are financially as you're growing your business, if whether or not that's a viable option for you.
I think it seems like you're surprised at how many people. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. Well, I was probably going to ask you your question. Or answer your question. I had just gotten off the rock boat. So timing is another thing that I think the listeners need to understand. I would like to say that I planned this out beautifully, but I just got off of this music cruise, and the fans, like, it was this high, got 2,500 people on this cruise ship, listening to live music and celebrating. And I get off this cruise, and maybe 2 days later, so everybody's still excited. They're still posting their photographs everywhere. They're still listening to all the CDs they bought. And yes, people still buy CDs, believe it or not. They're excited about the experience. They're going through all their photos. I want to say it was a couple days later, maybe even been a week later, but it was very close to the time frame of getting off this boat. So everybody was already interacting. My guitar player and I are thinking about touring across the country. Within like 2 days, we got 100 replies.
And was this with Brian, the guitar player?
It was with Brian Facchino, yeah.
Oh, so he's such a great guy.
And a phenomenal guitar player, and he's off producing now and doing a lot of other really cool things. But so he and I went out together, and we spent 5 months on the road, pretty much nonstop. I booked shows on the road the way that I would book them in Atlanta, which was a huge mistake. It was one of those where you say, oh, of course I can. But you forget about the drive time. You forget about needing breaks, needing resets, all of that stuff. Brian is married, and, it's like, having time to go home to family? I didn't factor any of that in. It was this naivety of like, let's just do it.
Yeah, I've been there before.
We laugh about it. We're such great friends, but we literally, after 5 months in the car, it was like you're locked in a tiny, and I didn't have a big car. I had a Dodge Caliber at the time.
I remember that. That was that blue one, wasn't it?
Little blue hatchback.
I totally remember that car.
So imagine, Gino, we're driving across the country, and we're in the middle of we're Arizona and New Mexico, and going up into Utah, and driving through these mountainous regions.
That's crazy. That's a long way from Atlanta.
With a tiny Dodge Caliber hatchback that is not made for long distance travel at all. It was a wonderful time, and it was also just such a big learning experience for us. But yeah, you're locked in the car with anybody for that period of time. You're going to get on each other's nerves. Yeah. And he's like my brother, so it's like a brother-sister relationship of two people just like, stop biting your nails, stop doing this.
This could be great or volatile, man.
I know.
Yeah, I have relationships like that with my cousins I grew up performing with, and it's in an article one of my cousins had said it was like being married 4 times over with all the benefits, and of course you just need time away from each other every now and again because you want to kill each other, but it's the best of both worlds. So I totally get that. Be cool to hang with because nobody wants to be in a band with an asshole. Excuse my French.
Not at all. Yeah.
So it seems like you've been busy building a nice little empire for yourself. I listened to your podcast, by the way, which is available on Spotify. Yeah, that's very, very cool. I did check it out, and I'll share links with all your stuff because that's really, really cool. But you kind of turned into I would call you a bit of a guru. Now you're coaching entertainers on their mindset.
Yes.
And so many people have the perception that to become rich and famous, whether it's acting or as a musician or whatever, that you got to have the X factor or whatever. And then there's this whole concept of luck and timing, right time, right place kind of thing. Looking at the website and looking at the mindset, you probably disagree to an extent with that perception. Is that fair to say?
I think to an extent, yeah. I think there are certain situations where things just happen. But I also think that we have a lot more control over those things happening than we think that we do.
Okay, and is this where the success part comes in with respect to the mindset? Like, are you telling me that I can will my own success?
Yeah, actually, yes, I am saying that. But I also want to raise the question of what is success, and posing that question that we all have a different term for what success means to us.
So once we can define it,
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'll let, this is your domain, so I'll let you do this one.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and this was kind of the big thing for me, and the reason I started getting into mindset coaching. One, I had to back up just a little bit. I experienced all of the things that every other entertainer out there experiences. I've experienced imposter syndrome, I've experienced self-doubt, I've experienced comparison, I've experienced self-sabotage. Any of those things that we go through, I have been through them. And I made this conscious decision years ago, actually, right after I left Atlanta. And I'll condense this story because it's on my podcast if anybody really wants to hear the full story.
And I will put the links there.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Super long story short, I ended up having a very unhealthy relationship with myself. When I was out performing and touring and doing all of this stuff, I would shame myself a lot. I'd beat myself up a lot. And I had to make this conscious decision that I didn't want to be this person anymore that was constantly beating myself up and obsessing over these things that didn't really matter in the big picture of me and my career and what I wanted. And I also had to figure out what it was that I wanted too. So I realized that I started sharing my story on stage and through my music. And I started using who I was as a point of connection with my audience. And that transitioned into people coming up to me after shows or events, or even other musicians and entertainers coming up and saying, "Oh, I'm going through that too," or "I've felt that too." Or
how did it feel to put yourself out there like that and make yourself so vulnerable to total strangers?
It is terrifying, and it's also freeing. There's something that happens when you're able to start becoming vulnerable, not only with yourself, but with other people. For me, every single time I've been able to be vulnerable with somebody and share my truth and share who I am in an honest way, it's almost this healing that happens internally. And it's not just healing for me, it's healing for this other person as well. And now that sounds very pretentious in the ego.
It's funny. I didn't take it that way at all.
Your story. Yeah. I mean, when you share your story with other people, you realize this light bulb moment that goes off. And then there's almost this acceptance of, okay, I'm not alone. And that's the other thing that I think that happens as well, too, that we forget is that whatever you've gone through in your life and whatever you're experiencing, we have a tendency to think that we are so alone, that we are the only ones who are going through what we're going through or experiencing what we're experiencing.
True.
Or when you can start connecting with other people and realizing, oh man, it's not just me. It's great. That's when the healing can actually begin for other people as well. So every time I'm able to get on stage and share my story, I remember, and every time I've gotten on stage, it wasn't like I got on stage and all of a sudden was like, here's my life story, blah, I didn't verbal vomit it to the crowd, but I would share little bits. I would share little bits at a time and little bits at a time.
Well, I was thinking back to the show we did together at Piedmont Park.
Yes.
And on your very first CD, Volume 1.
It was my first EP I did with Brian. Yeah,
Was
the first
that Volume
one.
1?
It was called Volume 1. Yeah, that was very creative naming there for me.
The last song on there had this really nice military style drum part, if my memory serves. And I just remember the anecdotal stories that you would tell between songs. And hearing you say it now, and then looking back on those shows and your interaction with the crowd, I can see you were probably at an infancy of sorts in terms of expressing where you were coming from. Because I remember you explaining the backstory behind some of these songs. And maybe that's the beginnings of being able to tell your story. Did you find that you were doing that on some level even back then? Or was this a conscious push to go, okay, I'm going to be much more revealing. I'm going to put myself out there?
As an artist and entertainer, I think we all become storytellers on some level. I started telling stories behind my songs a long time ago, but I don't think I necessarily was super vulnerable with what I was experiencing or going through as an entertainer.
That's a good distinction.
That's the difference. And so it's one thing to say, this is why I wrote this song and I went through this breakup and this is that. Or I wrote this song about my brother who's in the military, or I wrote this about my aunt and uncle, or whatever. You can tell stories about songs all the time, but there are lots of stories you can tell that are just surface level stories. And not necessarily surface level, but more so you don't reveal everything so that the audience is able to interpret however they want to interpret. But in telling those stories of like, hey guys, I used to beat myself up a lot. that takes it to a whole other level of vulnerability. And even now, I'm still telling more parts of that story that I've never told before, because new things come up and new things I discover along the way. Even just recently, I remember being on the rock boat in 2020 before COVID shut everything down. This was January. And I remember being on stage, and I had never told anybody over the microphone at a show that I used to, when I first started working on loving myself, that I used to stand in front of the mirror naked until I could find one thing that I loved about myself. And I was in this moment, I was on stage, and it just came out of my mouth.
That's actually very cool.
Sharing that on a microphone, on stage, in front of, I mean, the room was packed with people, and not, I don't mean that as like, oh, everybody came to my show, but it was a full room of people, and it was just like you could hear a pin drop, and there was that energy and this kind of terrifying but very freeing energy that happened. And I don't know, Gino, I don't know if you've played shows like this. I'm sure you have. Every musician has had a moment where they've been on stage and there is something that is happening in that moment of the song or the story or something to where you're like, oh, these people are connecting. Like it's happening.
It's
like, and it's almost,
feeling.
Oh, it's a beautiful feeling, but it's also a terrifying feeling, because it's almost like not in a scary way, but almost like this, like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? Like, we don't even know.
Did you find yourself like in that moment, like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that? Were you surprised by yourself?
I was. Most of the time when I get into the zone on stage, I don't really know what's happening. And I know that sounds very weird. I have a conscious understanding that I'm on stage and that I'm performing, but when I really get into a moment or a story, sometimes I even when I record my podcast, sometimes when I get on a roll and I start saying things, I have to go back and listen to what I said. Sometimes you do things and you're like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And
that I'm familiar with. I did a gig with my cousin a couple of weeks ago, and it was one of those 2-night back-to-back things, and I was out of gas. I was so tired from the night before. But the last set of that second show, I was hitting notes I didn't realize I could hit in the first place on a good night, let alone a bad night.
Yeah. And then that kind of, I don't know if I even answered your question about the coaching, but that kind of led me into realizing that the message that I was delivering on stage was bigger than just the music I was producing and putting out into the world. And that's when I started realizing, because I'd had people, not even just regular people or audience members, come up and say that they were experiencing what I was experiencing, but other artists and entertainers kind of asking me for advice. And how did I do this? And how did I do that? And then, COVID.
That created a whole nother set of challenges.
Yeah. And you have an opportunity whenever the world shuts down on you to shift and change. And take advantage of what you can learn from a situation. And that's another mindset thing that it's taken me a long time to get to as well. So I love touring. I love playing shows, but I also kind of might want to be a mom someday. And I kind of might want to get married someday. I don't know, we'll see what God has planned. But it was just this moment of what else am I really passionate about in addition to music? You don't ever stop being an artist and an entertainer and a creative. But so, yeah, I think I started really enjoying the conversations that I was having in addition to the music that I was playing. And then that with COVID realized, okay, I want to help people. I want every entertainer and artist or person in the world. Well, first it was everybody. I want everybody to love themselves. And I still do want everyone to love themselves. But I started realizing too, I want every person to learn about business and how to grow a business and what does that look like and what is marketing, what is what is budget, what are budgets? I don't even know. I didn't really think about business stuff. So in 2020, when the touring, I had a 5-month tour that got canceled. And I gave up my apartment in Nashville. All my stuff is still in Nashville. Where are you
at right now?
I'm in Virginia right now.
Okay. That's where you're originally from, isn't it?
I was born in Virginia. Yeah. And this is where I lived, military. Yeah. All that stuff. But, and this is what actually, the funny thing is I have so many artists and entertainers and actors and models and people I know that because they lost so much of their income, it was like, oh, guess we're all moving back home. Like,
We've got a couple that are
how
back
do
here
you grow
now.
a new business?
I'm
So,
sorry. I was saying we got a couple that are back here too.
yeah. And it happens. We have all these doubts that come into our heads of like, oh, I'm a failure and I've done this and I didn't make it and I didn't whatever. And then there's this, oh no, wait a minute. There was a global pandemic that shut down the entire world. Like it's
Yeah.
okay.
You
It's
can't blame that
okay
on
to
everybody.
exactly. It's okay to move in with people and have roommates and or move home or do whatever you need to survive. And I don't think that's another thing that I think mindset has to where it comes into play with especially with entertainers. It's okay to do what you need to do to put food on the table. Like
Right.
that's okay. And we have this conception we aren't, full time and if we aren't paying all of our bills with entertainment and art, then we aren't doing anything. And it's, and that goes back to the redefining what success is for you. But
Right.
anyway, we could have a whole other podcast on that. But I know I love helping people discover their own self-worth and their identity. And so I started taking some business classes. I dove into as much personal development and education as I could last year.
That's pretty cool.
Next up, I'm going to be doing some hypnosis practitioner certifications and things like that.
Oh.
And then I was at this one business training about a year ago, right before the shutdown again. And I remember because I had started planning for this a little bit ahead of time before COVID. And then I remember being in this group and this woman, we were kind of trying to figure out what our niche was going to be, who we were going to target and coach and train. And should it be an age group? And then this woman looked at me and she's like, well, you're a musician, right? And I said, well, yeah.
Of course.
It was like this light bulb moment. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I know a lot about the entertainment industry. I guess I know a lot about being a performer. I know a lot about all the struggles that performers go through. And so then that's really how it all got started.
So it seems very organic in how
business
it started.
From scratch. Yeah. And starting over really, but in a good way, in a positive growth way, learning what I need to learn, bringing on a business coach to help me grow my business for coaching, building out a whole online course that's coming soon, having the podcast, having my coaching clients, taking on new coaching clients. So it's a whole different way of operating. But it's actually a really exciting time because I'm learning so many skills.
I see you got the media kit checklist on your website.
I do have a media kit checklist. Yeah.
I signed up for that and then I tried to download it on my phone and I think it must be a setting on my phone, but it said oops or something like that.
You might have to do it computer. Because it's a PDF. And I don't know if the PDFs will download depending on the type of phone that you have. But I can also, the other thing too is that if you entered your email in, I can just shoot you the media kit checklist via email.
Yeah, I signed up. You can send me that. I think it'd be cool because I will tell you this.
So here's the thing with the mindset coaching, I realized that the majority of what I teach and coach is mindset related. It's integrating NLP NLP practices or NLP strategies into how to reframe your brain, how to reframe the way you see yourself, the way you see your career. But then I also incorporate setting out an actual business plan, a strategy, and learning things and incorporating the things that I learned that I never learned in music. Because here's the thing that I think is crippling for a lot of artists. Don't really know what it means to be organized or to have our brand together or have our messaging on point and to do all of that stuff. So I started putting together these free little
I love that it's in a PDF format. I could just
totally
download it. And
you can download it through a PDF.
Yep.
You can refer to it whenever you want. You can print it out. And that was the big thing, especially with the media kit, that I never realized. Every time you get booked for a show, what are the things people ask you for, Gino?
They usually want to know what it costs, what date I'm available.
Yeah.
Then they want to know what songs you play, how big your band is,
all of these
what do you
things.
need from me? Yeah,
and then it goes even further too. So if you were to book an actual venue, or if you were to do an interview, or if you were to do a business meeting with somebody, they're going to want to know what's your bio, what are your recent headshots, what are your, and this is for anyone, whether you're a musician or actor or model or comedian or anything, but they're also going to want to know just all about you. What are your social media links so we can put them up online? And then,
where can I see you at?
What about some videos where, and that's the thing that most entertainers don't realize. like getting all that put together or something that you can just easily send to people so that you're not sending 5 to 10 emails back and forth. One, you look organized and professional, which is huge. And two, they're not pulling stuff off of line that you had from 20 years ago. They know what video you want to promote. Exactly. And especially when you start doing bigger events, the more organized and put together you are, the better off it's going to be. And when you're pitching for events as well too, or you're pitching for shows, and now this is specifically related to music. It would be a little bit different for acting gigs and things like that. But when you're pitching, you want to have everything, and not just visually, but the verbiage that you use, the language that you're writing everything in, and then also what puts you apart from everybody else. And so I kind of go in there of like, hey guys, don't put like 5 pictures of you guys just standing up against the wall. Like get a little bit of variety.
That's been done a lot.
That's been done way too much, in my opinion, with bands. But then again, the question is posed, what else could they do?
That's a good question that you asked. I think part of that lies in understanding the identity of your own product or your own
brand. And that's where the mindset work comes in, because that's what I teach is, who are you?
Yeah, that's like what I was going to say. It goes right back to you. I might be talking to you a lot more than I thought.
You might be. What is it that's important to you? And not even just who are you, but why? And that's another message that I think a lot of entertainers miss. Where we miss the mark 100% of the time is we approach our audience from a sense of, oh, you like music, so here's my music, listen to it. There's no connection being made there. There's no like every piece of you, every piece of your story as a band or as a model or as a comedian or as an solo artist, every single part of you makes you unique. Now, there might be two. You might love roller skating, and then the person in the other band loves roller skating. I mean, granted, I'm throwing out a weird example here, but you guys might not.
A girl who did roller skating.
I know I did do roller skating. I think that was the first thing that popped in my head. But you might. So, for instance, you might roller skate and sing. I'm just going to make this up, okay, guys? Sure. You might roller skate and sing, which is actually very unique. Another woman that looks just like you might roller skate and sing, but you're both still two different people. So how do you differentiate? And so it's who you are. Fans and people connect in general to who you are as a person, not necessarily the art that you're putting out there, if that makes sense.
Actually, that does, but it's not the kind of thing I think that most people think conscientiously about. Like, I can sit there and go, man, I love White Stripes and not know why. Or I can go, man, I don't know. I can't stand that. I can't stand White Stripes.
Yeah.
There's something about them. And on some level, it's not just the music. I mean,
it isn't.
It could be the way we project ourselves or the way we feel about ourselves onto them, or maybe they remind us about something about ourselves that we don't understand or don't like. I mean, it could be any number of things, but I can learn how to get my head right, for lack of a better phrase. And I can do that at theentertainermindset.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can go to theentertainermindset.com. You can learn about the one-on-one coaching I do. You can learn about the online courses that are going to be coming out soon. I have free events that I do as well. I just did a 21-day free event in February where I interviewed experts all across the entertainment industry on how to shift perspective and pivot. I have 2 events coming up in May that I'm planning out right now, 2 one-day live events as well that are completely free for anybody to come to and listen and learn from. And then there's also the podcast as well. So I would say go to theentertainermindset.com and just do the connect tab, sign up, enter your information in so that you can just be on the mailing list and get info about all the events coming up. And then there's also a Facebook group that I just started. It is a private group, so you have to search for it. It should be under my page, which is Amy Gerhartz Music. And you can join that and then also get updates through Facebook.
Excellent. Well, I will tell you what, I haven't yet seen the PDF of the media kit checklist, but I can tell by looking at your form that you turned in that I send to all of my subjects. There are 10 unique websites on here compared to other musicians who have sent 1 or 2, maybe 3. You definitely got it together. So what you're doing sounds like it's working. So I'm going to be quite the avid listener. I could learn a lot from you. That's for damn sure.
Well, and I think that's another thing. And I've got, another podcast episode coming up soon about eliminating the word competition, because I think it's so important for us to realize that we're not in competition with each other. that
You
we can
said
actually.
cooperation instead of competition.
Yeah, exactly. Like you collaboration versus competition. Like
Oh, that's even better.
we've all done different things. It's amazing the experiences that you have, Gino. I don't have. You've done so many cool things in your life that I've never done. So it's
I've been bitten by a pretty big dog before. I know what you're saying, Amy. But again, and the reverse is true. I think you've done some pretty amazing things. I was fascinated by I don't know why I keep calling backyard concerts. What do you call them?
They're called house concerts.
That seemed like such a novel idea, and that never would have dawned on me. That's really cool that you did that. That took a lot of fortitude and courage, and
Thank you.
yeah, that's pretty cool. And the fact that you have to quote our most recent administration, the wherewithal, whatever that word means, to broaden your scope and not only give us your music, but to give of yourself to help musicians like me, who even in spite of the fact that I have years of experience like other musicians, there's so much that I have learned just doing this podcast. And it just proves to me that no matter who's listening, whether you've got 5 gigs under your belt or 5,000 gigs under your belt, there's always something we can learn from each other, not just musicians, but I think you've got a really cool platform, Amy, and I'm really, really looking forward to diving deeper into it. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was such a nice thing to say. I appreciate that.
It's freaking awesome, dude. And I know you've got another appointment, so I'm just going to ask you one more quick question, and I'll get
Sure.
out of your hair. I know I can go to the Entertainer Mindset, or I can go to amygerhartz.com, and I can find probably a lot of the answers to the questions that I'm looking for. But to be honest with you, I'm really lazy right now, and I don't feel like digging. And since I have you on here, I'm just going to ask you, if I'm starting out as an entertainer, well, what's your advice to me?
Right. Well, I would say the first thing to do is make a plan. So have a big plan, know what you want, but then break it down into things that you can put into actionable steps every week, every month, every quarter of the calendar. Because the biggest problem creatives have as well, we lack motivation when we don't see progress, which is pretty much everybody, really.
You just summed up my whole life.
I know. It's like, and I would tell you the first, 10 to 15 years of my life being in entertainment.
Oh my God.
I didn't learn this stuff until the last couple of years when I started really diving in. And with that, I would say have a plan, but then be open to find the people that are doing what you want to do and start learning from them. We think so often, and I made this mistake for 10 to 15 years where I thought I had to do everything by myself. But I could have gotten ahead or learned and grown a lot faster if I had taken on a mentor, or if I had found a coach, or if I'd found somebody, just like you get a trainer at the gym, or you have teachers that educate you on certain things. Find somebody that's in the path or the field that you want to go into, and learn from them, and that has already achieved some things that you want to achieve. If somebody comes to me for coaching, I may not be the right fit for them because I may not have done the things that they want to achieve. I think I'm a great mindset coach, but if somebody came to me and said, I want to win a Grammy, my thing would say, okay, I've never won a Grammy. Why don't you go ask somebody who has, like, how to do it,
That's a really good point you bring up. And a lot of musicians are aware of the fact that when they're creating music with somebody, you got to have good chemistry. I mean, that could make or break a band. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a volatile chemistry, like between Sting and Stuart Copeland, they're infamous for having this really volatile relationship. But I think that was part of the creative driving force behind the Police. But yeah, I need to take your advice and hook up with a nutrition coach. Man,
I mean, and I have coaches for almost everything now. I'm already dropped 20 pounds in the last 3 months. It's insane.
Yeah, I've seen your pictures. You look great.
Thank you.
You look great.
I feel good too. But I also have a business coach. It's the exact same thing with an artist and entertainer. If you want to tour, start talking to people that have done touring. If you want to have a label deal, start talking to people that have had label deals. Learn what to avoid, learn what you need to do, but learn from other people is the big message. So those would be the two places to start. Start a plan, have a plan, find a coach, find a mentor or somebody. And then the third thing I would say is, at the end of the day, it always comes back to you. And make sure that every decision you're making and everything that you're doing is what you want to do, because it's so important to really come back to you. What's making you happy? What do you really want? is this aligning with who you are and what you want to achieve?
That's pretty deep stuff, Amy.
I know. This is
No, that's
why I
cool
got into
though.
mindset coaching.
Well, I think it's amazing what you're doing, and I know I've said that already,
Thank
but
you.
I think you should, if you get a chance, check out Adam Gust's visit with me. I think you'll like a lot of what he has to say. We talked for like 2 or 3 hours, and so his is a
Wow.
long episode, but I'll share that with you. But
Yeah, definitely.
yeah,
Please.
I am so grateful that you had chosen to spend some time with me to get on this podcast, Amy. I love what you're doing. I'm
Oh,
gonna
thank you,
share.
Gino.
I'm gonna share all of these links with everybody, and
Yeah,
then
there's
if
so
you
many of them.
no, that's cool. That's great though, because like you said, people want to know about you, and this is there's several windows here into your soul. So I think that's really cool of you to share it. And also for all those listeners out there, if you would be so kind as to give me dates when you're going to do those, I will add those to the description.
Absolutely.
After we also,
yeah, you know what? I'll wait till I have it 100% confirmed, and I'll send those event dates over for sure for the free events.
that sounds
Yeah, that would
fantastic.
perfect.
I also I don't want to get out of here without saying this to you. I have been listening to your stuff in the interim. Of course, I got to play a lot of those songs on your first EP with you, and that was fun. And then there was the Fame remake that you did for the Anna Nicole Smith biography. And if you guys have not heard that, Amy Gerhartz, you can find it on YouTube. I don't know if it's on Spotify, is it?
It's not on Spotify. We didn't have the license to stream. We only had the license to sell it on iTunes, I believe.
Well, I'll tell you what, it is
yeah.
the coolest remake. It to me, it's akin to that Mad World remakes, that Tears for Fears song remake. Some guy did it, and it's real melancholy, and I love it. But I got to tell you, your Fire CD. Oh my God. My favorite cut off of that. I mean, there's a lot of it. Loving Myself is a
Thank you.
badass jam. My favorite ones this week, it'll probably change because I was stuck on, don't laugh at me. I was stuck on My Kind of Man.
Yeah.
I'm a dude, but I was just listening. It's just a good song.
It's got a cool groove to it,
really,
doesn't
really does. And I was stuck on that for a while. And it's like, people are looking at me like, why are you rocking out to that song so much? It's like, I can't help it. But
I
maybe
get that a lot.
won. Maybe you've won right now. Oh my God. That one, there's very few songs. Yeah. That's one of those songs that really, really moved me. But I mean, I love the whole thing. There's, I think, 10 tracks on it, my memory serves. And I love that record. I've got to get into the other. Hold On's pretty darn good. That's the more recent one, I think.
Yeah, Hold On's a more recent one. Loving Myself was the big game changer. And the interesting thing about that for me was that whole album I wrote after that story I told you about making that change in my life.
It sounds like you really hit a stride, man.
I'm in a happy place right now. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, it's a great record, and I've saved it on my playlist, and so I'm gonna rock that. Yeah, let us know when you got something new coming down the pipe.
I will. You'll be one of the first people I send it out to. I'm gonna need everybody to.
Well, we'll be here for you. Do you have any plans to tour this summer or?
This fall, and those will be up on my website, amygerhartz.com. But if I do hit the road full time, I might be a little more selective and just do a couple weekend gigs here and there, and then really just dive into this coaching and getting the message out that way. Or we're still in COVID, but during the shutdown last year, I did write a bunch of songs. So I've got a lot of new stuff I'm organizing as well too. So we'll see what happens. I'll definitely keep you posted.
Well, good deal. Well, you certainly earn the right to do it your way. So
thank you.
I'm looking forward to see how that works out. I think it's going to be wonderful, Amy. Thank you so much again for hanging with me.
Absolutely, Gina. Thanks for having me. This has been a joy.